on this episode of the Paranormal Rundown.
The most common thing that I see in the Quoraverse, the Redditverse, the various universes on the internet of, people who are trying to actually think through things.
Exactly.
They take all kinds of paths. But one of the primary paths is simply saying, I just cannot bring myself to believe that a God exists that would allow something like the Holocaust, or like the attack of Israel, or like the abortion of millions of babies, or how could there possibly be a God that allows that sort of thing to happen on Earth?
Well, the first thing we have to understand is God did not allow that.
Correct.
Man caused that. Mm-hmm. That is a part of original sin. See, people always want to blame God for everything, but man's the one that committed the original sin. So there's always going to be that in the world.
Free will is a double-edged sword.
Exactly.
You can either say, I want God to protect me against all the bad things that can happen in the world, but then that sacrifices one's own will. And
True.
At the end of the day, you would become nothing more than a puppet that sings praises.
Exactly.
Or hides in the shadows.
Right. I've heard this argument multiple times, in a spiritual sense, and then from just a sense of, especially younger people, just looking at, why would God let these things happen? And I come to over and over again the idea that a perfect life is boring. A perfect life is not something you learn from. If you don't have challenges in life, then you don't learn anything from it. You don't grow. You don't mature. Just like if you have a child and they don't fall and scrape their knee, they don't fail the math test, they don't have whatever experiences, get turned down by their first crush. If they don't go through these experiences, they don't grow. And I have come much more in life to view the relationship of God to us as really everything involved in that fatherly relationship, meaning we're the children that are growing up. And I don't mean growing up until we're adults. I mean, we're growing up until the day we die.
Exactly.
And so, that's what makes the most sense to me.
I mean, there's a particularly, and I don't mean this to be unpleasant, there's a particularly nasty kind of atheist out there who is a real, in your face, my God, how can someone who seems to be as intelligent as you possibly believe in a God? You are a disgrace because of the fact that you believe in a God. And I run into these people quite often, and they'll give me the argument of why would God allow X to happen? And the question that I've asked them over and over and over again and have yet to receive an answer is, okay, let's say that God had decided that I am no longer going to allow X to happen to men on Earth. Where do you draw the line? Where, yes, I can understand Holocaust, but what about cashiers who deliberately give you the wrong change? What about rapists? What about child abuse? What about people who don't obey traffic laws?
Parking tickets.
Parking tickets. Where do you draw that line? Where do you say, okay, up to here is fine human behavior. After this, I, as God, am going to prevent it. And then I'll ask things like, okay, just imagine, that you find yourself one day, your 2-year-old is walking toward an electrical outlet with a fork. It doesn't really that 2-year-old doesn't really have language. And the best way you can figure out to communicate to him that you cannot do that is to pop his bottom, which I have done.
Yes. Yes.
You know, which I have done. Well, you reach back to pop the bottom, and suddenly you can't move your arm forward because God has chosen that that's the line. I'm not allowing any corporal punishment of children. You know, so then you're no longer a human. You're no longer a self-directed human. You're a puppet.
The reality is, if he did draw a line and say, okay, the line is anything less than a horrible car accident, I'll allow, but from horrible car accident up to nuclear war, I won't. Those things are off limits.
Those things are off limits.
Okay. Well, then we would all be complaining about falling and scraping our knees. Why does God allow me to scrape my knee? Because our whole scale would be thrown off, right?
Well, and think about it. If there's ever a system put into place, we have gotten extremely good at, or certain people have gotten extremely good at finding the loopholes and trying to circumvent it. And that's probably where the vast majority of human ingenuity would fall into, is to try to get around whatever prohibitions have been set for us.
Well, one of the points is God did draw a line. He drew the line in the beginning. He told Adam and Eve in the garden,
correct,
you can eat of everything here except from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Okay, but they were deceived and they ate. Okay. Well, so here's the thing that nobody in our society today wants to deal with. There's consequences to everyone's actions, right?
That's correct.
So God said, okay, so from now on, this is going to happen. Adam, you're gonna work from the sweat of your brow. You're gonna deal with thistles and thorns and blah 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 blah. You know, and pain in childbirth, Eve, and so on and so forth. But here's the good news, and he gives us some good news there as well. But however, to say why would God allow these things? God didn't allow them to happen. Man made them come to pass to happen. So.
Well, I mean, to be fair, he did allow them to happen because he has the ability to stop any of it.
Right, but he allowed the humans to exercise free will.
Yes.
Yeah, he allowed it to happen because of consequences to their actions.
And
That's
there are cases, I strongly believe, where God does intervene. God does decide, absolutely. I'm not going to let this happen. This is where we talked about the idea of, and I know that's for another discussion, but the idea of the purpose of possession.
Oh, yeah.
God allows it to happen. And when it's time, he ensures that it stops happening. And so, you know, God does have his thumb on the pulse of things going, well, okay, that's enough. Right? But yeah, I mean, without free will and the ability to cause terrible things to happen, then we're all still just 5-year-olds in a playpen where we can't hurt ourselves. And that's
absolutely.
I don't think that's the way God intended us to live.
I agree. Absolutely.
But the idea of evil, now, bad things happening to me are not necessarily evil. So when this says evil, I view like the bad stuff, right? And I find that, you know, not to harp on it, but my experience did the opposite for me. The evil that I experienced threw me towards God. It was literally, if this evil exists, if it is real, then why not God? There has to be a counterbalance to this evil. And so, you know, it pushed me towards God. And I think God allowed that to happen for that purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that you when you speak of evil, most people just lump it into one category. But to me, there has always been two types of evil. There is mortal evil, which typically stem out of selfishness, ignorance, or something along the lines. But rarely is it never is it rooted in like a spirit of true destructiveness. It will cause pure destructiveness, but that's not kind of the root all end all. And then there is infernal evil. And infernal evil is there. It is only rooted in destruction. It is there to corrupt, to filthify, to putrefy, whatever other ifs you want to throw in there. And to me, those are vastly different in nature.
Yeah, that infernal evil is all about destruction.
Absolutely.
Destruction, and like you say, corruption. But yeah, I agree.
And we cannot negate the fact, guys, that some people are just damn mean.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
Hear all the exciting details on the Paranormal Rundown, available on all podcast platforms, YouTube and Rumble.